Hi, I'm Adam Brand, and music is what I do, but my second passion is motorsport. Craig Lowndes has taken over from Peter Brock as the most popular personality in car racing.
That level of connection and respect and love was enormous. And to hear that level of emotion in his voice was, it brought me undone.
Australian Story was with Craig Lowndes during one of the most tumultuous and emotional periods in the history of the sport. This is his story.
Craig is definitely one of the toughest competitors out there.
No, wrong. You've got to get inside.
He comes across as a very smiley, happy guy out of the car, and he's very consistent with that.
Mr. Magoo.
But in the car, you know, you can't let that smile confuse you. He's very aggressive on the track, he knows how to drive, and he'll put the car wherever there's space.
Oh, right on the back of Jason.
In great company with Sir Jack Brabham, Alan Jones, Peter Brock. But in the modern era, then really, you know, he's the guy.
It's very motivating for me to race. You know, I love the speed, I love the adrenaline. The pedal go hard, but there's no retard. I love trying to make the car perfect, which you never can. Basically, as Peter said, just enjoy it for what it is. You know, enjoy the moment, enjoy it. Now, he'd go and stand in the pit lane and go, wow, look at the crowd. Isn't it magical? You know, look at the skies, blue skies. I mean, what better place? Where would you like, you wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Oh, look, I think Peter was a great influence on Craig. When you've got someone to mentor you in terms of your attitude to racing and all the things that go along with racing, but also how that mixes in with life.
Peter always said to Craig, look, motor racing will serve you well as long as you are prepared to give back. And always said to him, Craig, you must have a life outside motorsport because you will not survive if it is purely motorsport. There's a lot more to it.
There was a group of us sitting around a fire at the back.
Do tell the truth or no?
You tell.
We met at Lakeside in 1996, years and years ago.
The truth is, she thought I was a typical driver, arrogant.
I did. I did.
We proved her wrong.
My friend, my ex-boyfriend at the time, said to me, for God's sake, Nat, can you just get his phone number? You know, just get his, I want HRT tickets. And I thought, oh, okay, yep, the last thing you'll ever do for me. Oh, rightio. So we exchanged phone numbers, and then 3 days later, yeah, he came up to Queensland and he's been up here ever since. Now, that is the real story.
He had soft brown hair and deep brown eyes beneath a big white cowboy hat.
Craig loves life. He's a country bumpkin like myself, and we just live day to day as we do.
To have the partnership as you know, as a soulmate, Nat knows when I'm you know, my good days and bad days, and we try and make it.
I am
as good.
so cooking you dinner tonight.
Oh, thanks. You know, with our lifestyle being so hectic, it was just a natural change for us to come here.
The property here in Kilcoy is about 420 acres. It allows us to have 8 horses that we've got here now and probably roughly 150 head of cattle.
To let the kids grow up in an atmosphere where they can have the freedom and run around and do things and, you know, help me on the farm. And, you know, that's what I was able to do as a kid growing up in Melbourne and with my dad and you know, my brother and all that. Well, I guess the first thing was, yeah, Dad was part of the HGD dealer team back in the late 60s, early 70s, so I guess motor racing was in the family.
Peter Brock has had a good night's sleep. He needed it, but in a few hours he too will be racing under the Holden Dealers team banner.
I first met Peter Brock before he became part of the Holden Dealer team. We lived in the same area.
Perth is a hard taskmaster to his team. He demands all they've got.
Yeah, my father was more of a, I guess, a mechanical engineer.
Take it up, Frank.
That's me. Well, 72, there was only a small group of us, permanent employees.
I'm in the middle of the back. We now take you direct to Bathurst for the official telecast of the 1972 Hardy Ferrero 500 on Kin.
That was just a year that everything went right for Peter.
Peter Brock, this brilliant young 27-year-old Melbourne.
And first son Greg, he was born in 1968, and Craig was born in 74. So that was he was born 2 years after Peter had won his first race at Bathurst.
By the time I came on the scene, which was in the mid-70s, Craig was a little tacker. It becomes like a big family. And so, you know, you watch the kids grow up.
I immediately had an attraction to cars and tinkering and mechanical stuff and pulling things apart and not sure exactly how to go back together. And you'd always have that one nut left. You think, where did that go?
In the early days of motorsport, we didn't have the budget to have the latest car, and so it meant that we had to work harder, and Craig did a lot of the work on the cars himself.
So you have the opportunity in '94 to join up with Peter and be part of the team, you know, to drive alongside someone you looked up to and a hero.
21-year-old Craig Lowndes is a young man in a hurry.
Peter and Craig drove together. Peter was very, very supportive of Craig.
And then when it became obvious that Craig was going to make it and be exceptional, motor racing drivers are pretty competitive. And it'd be fair to say that Peter went through a stage where a bit of the green-eyed monster came in, because he was nearing the end of his career and he could see this young guy coming through. And Peter wasn't one to think about retirement very easy. And so Craig got the good go-fast bits, and so there was a while there where Peter wasn't allowed in the workshop and wasn't allowed to look under the bonnet of the car and wasn't allowed to hop in Craig's car, and that was very hurtful for Peter at that time, because he realised he was being stepped aside and Craig was being brought on. And to be completely honest, Craig didn't quite understand the nuances of what was going on.
To the new Australian Touring Car Championship.
We won the championship in '96. We won Sandown.
Craig Lowndes wins. History in the making.
Then we went on to winning Bathurst in '96, so we won the trifecta, which Peter Brock's the only other person to ever done it.
Australian Touring Car Champion, Craig Lowndes.
Craig won 98. He had a big accident in 99, and I won most of the rounds, but Craig won the year.
Lowndes on the inside, skate from the outside.
I guess the biggest crash of our career was '99 at Colwood Park. Got away to a really crappy start. And I remember Mark Scaife going by, and we were sort of falling back into the clutches of others as we were sort of getting going.
Oh, no! Who's got the HRT car? Craig Lowndes! Oh, my goodness me.
That's a nasty...
Craig Lowndes, car one, our championship leader. You could
I was just in front, so I saw it in the mirror. They were all bumping into each other, and it was young blokes playing dodgem cars. You know, they were all bumping each other, and finally one spun the other one around, and Craig was the one that ended up doing the, you know, the somersaults and the half pike and all the stuff that ended up happening.
One of the things I told him was that if ever in a big accident, your head and neck are your most vulnerable parts of your body. Let the steering wheel go and support your head.
And I put my hands off the steering wheel onto my helmet, because we didn't have the hands device then. So I checked my neck, put my right leg onto the brake pedal, which sounds dumb, but it pushed my whole body back into the seat.
Because if that thing catches fire...
It was probably the worst day in motorsport that I've ever experienced.
All these guys are friends. Crompton in there, they're all concerned.
But the most memorable part of it was having the drivers stop and get out and come to my assistance. So I suppose, now later in life, and if we went through the same incident again, it'd probably be a little bit different. Knowing Nat and the kids were around and wanting to be around for a lot longer than just this moment. Definitely I think it'd be a little bit more nerve-wracking than what it was back then. In 2000, I guess things started to go downhill as a relationship with the team.
There came a time when Craig sort of grew bigger than what was able to be controlled by the people who felt they needed to control every little thing.
So we just made a decision that's right for us.
They decided that it's time to put the reins on Craig a little, and suddenly he found that he was being put in the same position as Peter had earlier.
For Craig Lowndes to go from being, one of Holden's superstars to the Ford superstar when he went across there, it was big news.
Through 2000 was quite difficult, not sort of being involved with test days and sort of, I guess, the team ostracising me a little bit, because obviously, we made a decision to break, which I don't blame them for it.
And it's almost like a light went on, and he understood that Peter, through the time that he had been being eased out, had still remained very diplomatic, had never made a public show of it, had still been very supportive to him. And so everything Peter said and did for Craig took on a greater meaning, and they developed a very, very close bond and a huge... They'd always respected each other, but now it became very, very intense.
I love talking with people and I love interacting with the fans. You can't just take everything from motor racing and not give anything back. Like, it's not hard to look someone in the eye and say, hello, how you going? You know, how's your day going?
With Craig, what you see at a racetrack, the way he smiles, the way he is, his persona, is pretty much exactly what he's like at home. He doesn't change. He's always smiling, he's always happy and extremely hyperactive. So really, I've got 3 kids, not 2.
I've always wanted to have kids. Before, basically, it was my life and everything was done around me, which is probably a bit, what's the word, selfish. You know, I'm about to, as I said, grow up and it's not all about me, and that's Nat's favourite saying, it's not all about you. We were down in the other house, and I remember the phone ringing.
The first person to ring was Glenn Seaton, and he told me, and I thought, I couldn't believe it. I said, you sure, you know, are you positive? And
I knew by a tone of her voice and her body language that something was seriously wrong, and I didn't know at that point whether it was, you know, her family, my brother, like, you know, what was going on. And then she said that Peter had passed away, and
I can honestly tell you I've never ever seen him so upset. Yeah, ever. He was an emotional wreck, to be honest, and just completely devastated.
Tonight, motor racing legend Peter Brock killed in a rally crash.
I don't want to say goodbye. I've never had, in my whole lifetime, someone that's touched me so much and meant so much to me that you'll never be able to say hello again or goodbye.
You just want to reach out and hug him, because I know the impact that it had on him. It's like it was no different to being one of my own kids. That level of connection and respect and love was enormous, and to hear that level of emotion in his voice was it brought me undone. And I can understand it because there was a very powerful connection.
Craig Lowndes and Mark Scaife summed it up beautifully last week when they both said, as young blokes, we all wanted to be him. So for Peter, thank you very much for truly enhancing our lives. Farewell, PB. We're all glad that you gave it a red-hot go.
It's hit home that we're not invincible. Yes, motor racing's dangerous. Right at this moment, I don't know if I'd want to get into a car at this stage. You know, we've got Bathurst coming up. As I said, I was looking forward to sitting down and having a chat with Peter and just, you know, finding out how his life's going and what he was up to.
Bathurst's big weekend of racing and remembrance has been marred by a horrific crash at Mount Panorama. 2 drivers are in a critical condition after tangling during a warm-up race.
And today, for the last time, the front row of the grid was his alone.
What I saw at Mount Panorama blew me away. The tributes and just the emotional outpouring. You know, I thought that I'd be stronger on that day, but I still really struggled with it.
This driver parade is starting.
I suppose no one knew the feelings we would all have. And to drive the Tirana around the lap of Bathurst, and you know, I have to thank Ford for that.
And we're starting with the Tirana XU1, driven by Craig Lowndes.
You know, I was going to drive the car regardless, and to be in that car that won it in 1972, which is 2 years before my making, it was quite special.
The parade lap with Craig driving that car, I'm not an emotional person, but that was very tough.
So much what we have today. Give me a
to see him honoured in a way that all his cars went through that time, to see them in such mint condition and to see people who were so intimately involved with it all get so involved in that parade lap was a most incredibly moving time, and I know it impacted on Craig.
The checkered flag fell for the last time for Peter Jeffrey Brock.
Every driver and pit crew joined in a minute's silence.
A minute of silence, and everyone, and like, it was quite eerie. Like, I'd never been to a stadium or something with such magnitude of people and not one sound was spoken.
Personnel now starting to leave the grid as we get down to 29 minutes, folks, to the start of the 2006 Super G Autos Bathurst 1000.
Before he got in the car, he was in tears. He was a bit of a mess, and we weren't quite sure whether he could hold it together for the complete race.
And then to walk into the garage and then knowing that the job I had, and I had 5 minutes to get out of my mess and then get into a race car and start the biggest race of our career. Roland Dane, our boss, sort of said, look, you know, I'm quite happy to put Jamie in the car, and I said no. So I want to get in this car, I want to race.
Here we go, the revs rise. It's time to say farewell to Peter in the way that he would have wanted. Let's go racing on the mountain. The Super G Auto 1000 is on, and Craig got a brilliant start.
Throughout that first stint, that was probably the most emotional stint of my life.
Oh my goodness me, that is a shocker.
Rick Kelly's just turned in the fastest lap of the race at 2:88 as he chases down Craig Lowndes.
That's an off at 300 Ks. It flew right across the road.
We're on! Lowndes versus Kelly!
We knew that if we crossed the line behind Craig, it was going to be extremely painful to finish so close to a race win at Bathurst without clinching it. So we were thinking of that the whole time in the last 10 laps.
These two guys are putting extreme pressure on each other.
Pushing as hard as we can, and lap for lap, lap time for lap time, you know, corner by corner, trying to outbrake each other and trying to catch him and pass him.
Fastest lap of the race for Craig.
But we pushed hard and we got everything out of the car, and we ran it sort of to the nth degree. We ran it up curbs, we ran it on white lines, we ran it on anything and everything we could.
Last lap, mate, last lap.
That's the level that you have to perform at sometimes, and he rose to a very, to a very high level.
These two fellas are fighting it out in the championship, and they're on the absolute limit through turn 2.
If you look at that race, a lot of people would say that Brock was definitely had some sort of control on that race. You know, there was things that went on that Brock would be pretty happy with.
Great drives from both these fellas.
Yeah, at certain given times we would, sort of shake ourselves up and, and have a quiet word to ourselves, and ask him for a bit of help and a bit of guidance. Sort of asking Brock, I said, "Come on, mate, give me some hand," and we got it through.
Peter, when he drove Bathurst, he was at one with the car and at one with the circuit, and anybody who's been in that zone will know that there are no limits, no boundaries. And Craig was in that zone, and in that zone, I have no doubts he could pick up Peter, because I am 100% sure that Peter was driving that car with him.
10 years in the waiting, Lowndes and Whitcomb do it! That is an incredible moment!
It was a fabulous time to be there and share that with them. It was just rare and beautiful.
Craig Lowndes and Jamie Whitcomb, winners of the Super G Auto 1000!
That race, I don't think it would concern Craig a lot if he never won another race. I know that's not the right thing to do. But that race meant more than any other race he'll ever do.
We certainly made Peter very proud to be able to win Bathurst for that year and dedicate it to Peter. It was lovely.
Yeah.
Mm.
One of the racing drivers involved in a high-speed crash at Bathurst on Friday has died in a Sydney hospital.
I think it's just with the whole incident of the Mark Porter, the Peter Brock, I'd probably take a different approach now than what I did before the incident. So it's more family orientated now more than anything. There's certain events like Targa Tassie and other events like that which I've probably been wanting to do.
Which you can't do now.
Which I can't do now. And I don't. And to be honest, I don't know if I'd really want to do it anyway. Like before the incident with Peter Brock, probably had ambitions to get forward involved and do it. But now, just not interested. I'd just rather be at home with Nat and the kids and here and be in one piece and enjoy life for what it is, not necessarily going out and doing races like that.
Can you record that?
Just coming from Bathurst, it's not like a grand final, a football grand final where you get a chance then to have the off season. We've straight back into it, and back here at Indy, and then we've got Tasmania, Bahrain, and then down to Phillip Island for our last race. You're saying that like for tomorrow and that we're going to have to start doing that run?
That's right.
So we might start doing it now.
No, because if you do though, you'll get things saying you shortcut the chicane. You missed the chicane.
Side by side, but Ingall's got the preferred line. Oh, and Lowndes goes straight through.
Oh, black flag, pit lane drive through for Craig Lowndes. He did not readdress. He should have readdressed it. Why did he wait?
I think that the pressure built. We had the big boil over and then there was the roaring on the radio and Campbell Little, his engineer, trying to calm him down.
He is ropeable. I've never heard him carry on quite so much.
But the circuit breaker did jump out and he did show some emotion. I reckon it was great.
We spent a lot of money.
Lowndes faced a V8 hearing at the Melbourne airport today for comments post-race which were deemed to have brought the sport into disrepute.
I've never had any intention of putting the sport into disrepute.
Russell ran wide, ran me wide, and I had to go around, otherwise I was going to run over the tyres. And
now I've learnt that if things go bad, is not to talk to media, and that's a hard thing because I'm always very friendly to media, and media have always been very friendly to me.
Lowndes was slapped with a $15,000 fine for an outburst at the last V8 race in the Gold Coast to Saga and Stanford.
We went to Phillip Island the last round of the championship, and everyone forgot about me losing the plot at Indy.
We're at the 13th round of the championship. 31 races have been completed, 3 more sprint races to come. Probably couldn't be a better scenario.
We've just completed practice. This year it's obviously very tight between Rick Kelly and myself because we've got 7 points separating us.
It was very tough, to be honest with you. I've never been in a position before where I'm fighting head-to-head with someone for a championship, and it was interesting to see the new elements that came into the battle.
Both teams were on a war footing. There was a lot at stake for both manufacturers. Both drivers knew that they were playing for keeps, and everyone was on for a battle, and that was pretty much what we got.
Lowndes is trying to get through. This is Lowndes on Scaife in Siberia, trying to capitalise on that error from Jason Bright. He's got the inside run, but that puts him on the outside for the Hayshed. Look at this, fastest point. Oh, there's got contact into the Hayshed. Lowndes goes off.
Well, I thought he was crazy, and there was certainly never going to be, please Craig, come through.
Been the last round of the championship, the family's here, and Nick sort of comes and watches us every race, and so we'll go home and she'll tell me what I did wrong, and have a bit of laugh, and see what we can do tomorrow.
And Lowndes gets a good one.
Car 16, Garth Tander is going to get the bad sportsmanship flag for blocking.
Blocking again, car 16, blocking again.
Black flag for Garth Tander.
And Rick Kelly has come up on the back as well. And Lowndes does it to draw level with Rick Kelly. Tied on points going into the last race of the season.
Great job.
They're gone. Great start, Lowndes. Oh, race leader at Lowndes. That is Lowndes. He's been taken over.
The incident in race 3, there was things said over the radio, win it or bin it, and all this sort of stuff. For me, it's not the spirit of the sport.
Is the champion for 2006.
Deliberately served a penalty, they gave him a drive.
No, but they said I have no doubt that Rick didn't run into Craig deliberately, but was he careless? Could he have done it differently? Yeah, I'm sure he could have.
They can impose another penalty.
You know, the incident at the last round at Phillip Island was one very small section of the racing I've done with Craig over the last 5 years. And, you know, it was probably a little unfortunate that the championship had to finish in that way.
Everyone started cheering, and it's a great feeling to have that support.
Kelly and Craig Lowndes today endured a marathon 4-hour appeal hearing. Lowndes and his team having lodged a protest after the Ford driver was
going into the inquiry. I don't know if I'd really want the championship under those pretences. You know, you want to win the championship on the racetrack, not in a courtroom or a hearing.
We find there is no evidence to support a finding of reckless driving by Mr. R. Kelly.
You know, and then we had an opportunity to go another higher level if we wanted to. But in the end, I said, I don't know if I really morally want to win the championship. You know, I want to win the championship on the racetrack. I don't want to win it in a courtroom. So, you know, Ford's wishes were basically up to us.
Just to let you know, they're not appealing.
They're not. We win. Yeah, well, just seconds ago we just heard that you know, Craig and his team at 888 aren't going to appeal the decision made by the stewards. Thank you.
So, officially now.
Thanks a lot.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
On the day, he farewelled his friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Bathurst champions for 2006, Craig Lowndes and Jamie Whincup.
For Craig, he was pretty messed up. It was a bit scary, actually, in a way, when he walked up the pit lane. But, you know, once he put the helmet on, he did what he always does and just give it a red-hot go.
With Craig, you see something exceptional that just says he's taken up the mantle where Peter left off. I mean, I wish Peter hadn't dropped the mantle the way he did. He would be horrified to think that he went out with the biggest mistake he'd ever made. But he'd also be exceptionally honoured to see that Craig had carried it, and he will do so with grace for a long time to come.